Navy.
Okay. And what was your place of birth?
My place of birth was Clearwater, Florida.
Okay, super. Will you consider yourself a country boy or a farm boy?
I'm probably neither. I'm a city guy, I guess, a city beach guy from Clearwater Beach.
Okay. Did you volunteer, or did you volunteer to be in the Navy, or draft wasn't available at that time?
I volunteered to join the Marine Corps. I joined the Marine Corps in 1981, so by the time I arrived on the USS Wisconsin, I had already been in the Marine Corps almost 10 years at that point.
Super. When did you learn you were going to serve on the Wisconsin?
I learned I was going to serve on the Wisconsin about 2 weeks before I actually reported on board. I had last-minute orders to get to the ship prior to the ship deploying. I had to go to the Nuke Weapons Security Officer course. So I went to the Dean Parkson Center to attend the Nuclear Weapons Security Officer course. And it wasn't long after attending the course that Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. I knew that our mission for our med cruise was probably going to be dramatically changed.
What were your impressions of the ship the first time you saw her?
The first time I saw the Wisconsin, it was an incredibly impressive ship. I was walking down the pier as it was in Norfolk Park, and the sight of the ship and the 16-inch guns, they were just awesome, awe-inspiring. It was something that you really couldn't take your eyes off of when you're walking down the pier.
Did you realize what kind of a sophisticated warship machine this was?
No, I didn't. I had spent a lot of time already on a ship. I had been in a med already on an LST, so I understood, really what had to go on the ship, but I had never been on a real Navy surface combatant before.
Did you ever serve on any other ships after that?
Not after the USS Wisconsin. I served on in the med before that, but on a landing ship tank, an LST. But after that, no, I didn't serve on. I deployed. I went on other ships, but I never served on.
Super. What was describe your job in detail, sort of on the ship?
Well, our job as Marine Detachment was really to guard the weapons on board and also to provide security for the ship. But there were a lot of other tertiary duties that we had on board. Myself and the CO were both 5-inch gun mount director officer stations. We both had to be qualified in naval gunfire spotting. Many of our Marines had to be qualified in naval gunfire spotting. Our Marines also did duties like they were the orderly for the captain on the ship. And we also manned the 5-inch gun mount on the starboard side aft, and we also manned all 50 caliber machine guns. We had 4 50 caliber machine guns, 2 forward, 2 aft, that were used for if we ever needed for any close-in weapon support.
So your workstation per se was your office. You didn't. I mean, you were everywhere.
We were everywhere.
Right.
My stateroom. I had a desk in my stateroom. I worked in my stateroom a lot. But many times I was down in the Marine Guard Shack, worked in the Marine Guard Shack. My general quarter station typically was Sky 4. However, I did do time in all the other skies, but mostly Sky 4. And when the war started, on the night that it started, I was in Sky 4.
And we're going to go to your stateroom along the line, so we'll talk about that later on. Did you feel safe on the battleship?
Absolutely, I felt safe. You're probably on the most protected ship ever built, as far as being able to withstand any type of enemy fire.
Super. Tell us about some of the other time on the ships. Just, you talked about these shafts. Just throw some of those stories out. Yeah.
Well, one of the first stories, I was sitting in the XO's office. The XO and I had actually had a previous experience prior to the Wisconsin. So he was the. Can I take a time out just for a second?
Oh,
I
sure,
need to get
go
a
ahead.
drink of water.
I'll just let it keep going. He's on film. He can take a water.
I had deployed prior to showing up in the USS Wisconsin, and we were doing a workup to go to the med, and I was on an LST, and the LST was the USS Manitowoc. And the USS Manitowoc took us down to Puerto Rico, and we operated off the Manitowoc in Puerto Rico. And sometimes the Marines and the Navy can have an adverse relationship when they're on ship together, and sometimes that relationship happened on the USS Manitowoc, and the captain wasn't very pleased with us at times, the captain of the Manitowoc. So I was glad to get off the Manitowoc and move on to another ship, and I was on the Barnstable County and went to the med and came back from the med. And then I received my orders to the Wisconsin. I reported in. I went back, saw the Marine Detachment CO, Captain Greg Habel. And Captain Habel said, "Hey, Kent, I need to take you up and introduce you to the ship's XO." I said, "Fine, sir, sounds great." So we walked into the wardroom, and as he opened the door to the wardroom, and I looked, I noticed that the CO of the Manitowoc was now the XO of the USS Wisconsin, and he owned me. And the CO walked me up to Captain Schill, and I can see he's looking at me, and I'm looking at him. And before the captain could even, my CO, Marine captain, can even make our introduction, Captain Schill looked at me and goes, "I remember you." It's like, this isn't starting out well. But we had a great relationship, and I really loved working for Captain Schill, and spent quite a bit of time in his office talking to him here.
Super. Tell us about the training you had originally.
My original MOS in the Marine Corps was an assault amphibian vehicle officer. That's what my job was in the Marine Corps. But as a Marine officer, and you have to be able to do a little bit of everything, so I got assigned. It was a pretty prestigious position, frankly, to be on a Marine detachment. I was eager to perform well. We got here on the ship, and immediately I started learning a lot of new things. For example, I had to learn how to be a naval gunfire spotter, which I hadn't learned how to do before. I needed to learn how to be a 5-inch gun mount director officer, which I hadn't learned how to do before. You need to learn a myriad of other tasks, like damage control, and you needed to learn just about every compartment of the ship, because if you had a security alert or a drill that you had to go, you had to be able to transit the ship to any place there might be a threat. So there was really a huge learning curve for me, and there was a whole nuclear weapons security officers course that I had to go to prior to even checking on board. So there's a lot of training that went into being a Marine detachment and a Marine detachment executive officer.
Tell me about some of your liberties, if you want to.
We didn't have a lot of liberty, frankly. Like I said, originally when I checked onto the Wisconsin, the plan was the Wisconsin was going to go to the Mediterranean and have a cruise around the Mediterranean and visit all the great exotic spots that are in the Mediterranean. But right after I attended the Nuke Weapons Security Officers course, Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and I knew at that moment that we probably was going to be some change to our deployment plan. Everything you could tell, there was a heightened sense of alert prior to the ship pulling out. A lot of activity, a beehive of activity on the ship. A lot of different things happening as we were getting ready to go. A lot of last-minute changes, but still, the word was, "Hey, we're going to the Med." That's the plan. As we left the pier and we started heading out through the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, once we were clear of the Chesapeake Bay, the Captain Blesh came across 1MC and said, "Hey, our orders have been changed. We're going to proceed at full speed to the Persian Gulf, and our Mediterranean trip's been canceled, and that's all." And he literally, when he hung up, you could feel him hit the gas down in the engine room, and we went up to about 25 knots, and we never slowed down again until we hit the Suez Canal. We had to transit the Suez Canal. That was a little bit of a heightened sense of security going through the Suez at the time, and then into down through the Red Sea, and later into the Persian Gulf, where we were really the first capital ship into the Persian Gulf within about 16 days of leaving Norfolk. So it was a heck of a transit, and the ship did great.